day of the week. We're talking college football, specifically some bowl games. We had the Rose Bowl, we had the Sugar Bowl, we had some really good performances for different reasons. Quick reminder, the show is brought to you by our pals at FanDuel and SeatGeek. More from them later. But before we dive into what was a really good Monday of football at the college level and some of the quarterback prospects who may or may not be in the draft this year, or this summer rather. Alex, how you doing, brother?
I'm good. How we doing, Taylor? We're getting down to it. Here we go. We're almost done. You know, how many times have people heard me say, "Oh, we got to get all the data. We got to get all the information." We're almost to the end of this, and then the pre-draft process begins, if you can believe that. All the work we've done up to this point, we have one game left, and then that's when the pre-draft process starts.
And then I can finally get to know more than just the quarterbacks. I got to see Blake Corum. I mean, impossible to miss him. He had a lot of good performances all over the place. But we're going to start off with the Rose Bowl. So, topic I want to ask you about, J.J. McCarthy. One of the big things in this game was, is he going to actually prove that he can compete at the NFL level? Should he declare for the draft? Or is this going to be a game where you say, you know what, maybe he just takes another year in school, gets some stuff worked out? I think I know where you're going to go with this, but just, so I can ask, does he need to go back to school, or do you think he showed it up to potentially declare?
I don't think he needs to go back to school. He can probably come out and be a, whatever you want to call it, a top 200, maybe top 150 pick. But the numbers were impressive, right? 17 for 27, 221 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. Can throw a little asterisk on that no picks, right? Because he got kind of bailed out on the first play of the game. But I really think you mentioned Blake Corum. We'll talk about Roman Wilson as well. I thought this was a really good game for Michigan skill position players. This was another one where to me, J.J. McCarthy, even though he threw the ball 27 times, was as much in the passenger seat as he was in the driver's seat. You look at his, he had one big time throw according to PFF. His average depth of target was 6 yards per attempt, which the Bo Nix's for the season was 6. And that was, outside of the top 80 nationally. So that's not that aggressive of a game. He did have a couple of nice throws. Well, first off, he made a great catch. Yeah. And then the throw to get the ball off on that, what should have been a failed trick play, I think was a nice one. And he has that one other throw. I'm trying to remember. I don't think it was a touchdown. It got them down to the red zone where he rolls to his left and kind of pulls back up and throws a little bit right. I can't remember who that was. I think it was to Roman Wilson, but, picked up a decent gain there. But overall, he still looks very raw. I kind of felt watching him a little bit like I felt watching Bailey Zappi on Sunday against the Bills, where there are certainly individual plays in there where you're like, oh, okay, that's impressive. But there's too much just bleh in between all of it to look at him and take him seriously as a starting NFL quarterback. Now, Bailey's 24, 25 years old. He's going into the 3rd year of his rookie contract. He doesn't necessarily have the time to turn that around and be a legitimate starter. You could argue that for J.J. McCarthy, but that's not a first-round pick. That's a guy you're taking in the 3rd round, maybe late in the 2nd. You have an established starter. This is a guy you're at the very least sit for a year, maybe 2, kind of like the Packers did with Jordan Love. Jordan Love probably shouldn't have been a first-round pick. That was just a weaker quarterback class.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at with J.J. McCarthy. It wouldn't surprise me if he comes out because, again, I still think he'll get a decent pick. Now, he can go back to school and have a massive NIL deal. He's probably going to make more money, not overall, but in the year 2024, he'll make more money going back to school than he will going to the NFL. I truly believe that. Maybe he just wants to get to the pros, though, and if he does, that's his prerogative, and great, good for him. He's not a first-round pick. He's not a year 1 starter. He's not right now close to being a potential franchise guy. That's just not, it's out the window. I didn't think he was exceptional in this game. He had moments where he was really rough, and I think you have to look at those.
And then we had a comment in the chat. Depth of target's the dumbest stat in football. Who cares if he throws 6 yards or if it's 17? I'm very confused. Okay, so I understand where you're coming from, but it's important because, one, if you're looking at, say, like a Bo Nix, like a big part of the discussion with him is that, you see the accuracy and his stats look good from afar, but the average depth of target matters because it shows how often they're testing downfield windows. And that's important in the NFL because we saw Mac Jones when he had, for the games where he was having like a 4 or 5 yard average depth of target. wasn't impressive. And in the NFL, if you're just going to throw under 10 yards, defenses are going to start taking advantage. They're going to start jumping routes, makes you more predictable. And in the college level, you have your Justin Herberts, where he was in a similar situation at Oregon, where he wasn't throwing downfield a lot because it was just a scheme that was a lot of RPOs and things like that. Then he gets to the NFL and you see, okay, he does have the talent to do more than that. So it's not an end-all be-all stat. And that's a fair thing to point out. But at the same time, JJ hasn't also shown consistently that he can win as a downfield passer. And that's something where teams are going to say, like, to your point, that's what kind of slips you in the draft order. When you've shown that you can perform at that kind of level and you're not a Justin Herbert, where Justin Herbert clearly had the physical talent, it was more a question of, okay, he hasn't done it yet. Is it going to translate to the league? And it did. But JJ isn't the same physical specimen. So it's a fair point to make, but that is why those stats matter, because the NFL is going to look at that and say, well, I want to see him make NFL caliber throws, and that's not really happening if you're in a college offense where RPOs are already rampant and you're not really throwing downfield very often.
So and my point, like, so many people will point to, oh, he threw for, a guy, and this isn't just JJ McCarthy, this is anybody, threw for X number of yards. And look at this. He's this big yardage quarterback. Because that's, I think, what everybody wants in New England, right? A guy that can, but if he's throwing the ball 2 yards down the field and then the receiver makes 5 guys miss and it goes as a 25-yard gain, who made the play? Right. Who really made the play? Was it the 2-yard? And that's not to say 2-yard pass can't be impressive. Maybe he shook a defender or whatever, but like, it just kind of tells you who's carrying the brunt of the workload. And you have a guy like, JJ McCarthy, whose ADOT was 6. And if you'll just allow me a second here to pull this up for point of comparison, you want to guess what Michael Penix ADOT is lower than what I thought it was going to be. It's 9.1, really? Which isn't a bad number. I thought it was going to be something absurdly high. Quinn Ewers was 11, and Alabama had a really weird game plan. I doubt Jaylen Milroe's was that high. Jaylen Milroe's was 8.3. So, by multiple yards, the lowest of the week. And just to bring this same commenter up, who cares if the play's made at a 70% clip, to bring it back to the Patriots. And this is something that goes to, a lot of these quarterbacks have all this talent around them. Do the Patriots have a guy like a Blake Corum who can make guys miss those tackles and create after the catch? Do they have a guy like a Roman Wilson who can make some of these plays? That's the point. It's not the completion percentage matters. Like, it's important, certainly. But if you're just completing it 3 yards down the field every time, and then you go to a situation where you don't have guys that can compete after the catch,
like the Patriots,
right? Exactly. Like, then, so what? So they're just going to be 3-yard checkdowns and tackles, and that's kind of how you end up with Mac Jones. So the plays are being made, but you have to look at the full picture there. And I know this is going to sound a little hypocritical because we're going to talk later about Michael Penix, and everybody's going to come in the comments and say, well, Michael Penix has so much star power around him, that how can you bank on him being good in the NFL when he's not going to have that same star power? You have to look at what the quarterback does in a bubble. And yes, some of these guys have great offensive lines. Yes, some of these guys have great receivers. Take the other, I don't want to say take the other 21 guys out of the picture, because I think the corner matters in this, but what does the quarterback do? Does he make the right read? Are his mechanics good? When the ball gets to the receiver, where is it placed? I don't really care what the receiver does after the catch, short of, does the quarterback allow the receiver, right? Does he set him up, lead him to where he can create after the catch? When you watch the Michigan offense, again, there's that one throw that JJ McCarthy made rolling to his left, where he comes back and throws across his body and hits it. That's a nice throw. If he was doing consistently, I'd feel a lot better about it. But there's too many times where, here's what I'd say. If you're looking at it this way, stop the film as soon as you see the catch. Stop the film as soon as you see the catch and tell me what he looks like. If you watch JJ McCarthy in that context, you're not going to see a ton of big plays. You're not. Right. And I'm not saying that every play has to be a big play. I think there's value in guys that know when to hit the check down. It's finding that balance. And right now, there's just not enough on JJ McCarthy's shoulders. And this goes back to my overarching point on JJ McCarthy. Everybody thinks I think he sucks because I say he's not a first-round pick. There's a lot of quarterbacks that aren't first-round picks. Most quarterbacks aren't first-round picks. Some good quarterbacks aren't first-round picks. I don't know that JJ McCarthy's good. I don't know that JJ McCarthy's bad. I haven't seen him be asked to do enough to feel strongly about it one way or the other. I think if you feel strongly that he's good, you're kidding yourself. I think if you feel strongly that he's terrible, you're kidding yourself. He's a total unknown. But the reality is, you really shouldn't be using a first-round pick on a total unknown. That's how you end up with Trey Lance. So right. I just think there needs to be, you need to see more from JJ McCarthy. Now, maybe you're an NFL team saying, look, he's 6'3", he's 20 years old, he's got some athletic traits. We'll see more in camp, right? We'll see more in camp, and we'll sit him for a year, and we'll see more in practice. And great. Like, if that's the plan, and I think there will be teams, frankly, that see that. If he comes out, will be somewhat aggressive. But I'm not going to get to see that. The Patriots don't really have the time to do that. And that's why, at least certainly for the Patriots, he's not a first-round pick. In most teams that need a quarterback, don't have the time and the luxury, and the teams that do have a quarterback and are maybe looking 2 or 3 years down the road aren't going to take that guy in the first round because they're trying to maximize the quarterback they have now. So that's where I'm at on JJ McCarthy. I don't think this game changed me a ton for him one way or the other. I think it more so just reinforced how I felt. And yeah, to go back to the original point, Taylor, because I realized we've gone around and around and around. It would be, I think, if he goes back to school, especially with what next year's quarterback class is looking like, and Cam Ward declaring over the weekend, which we'll get to a little bit at the end. We'll see what Penix does. JJ McCarthy probably is a first-round pick next year if he has a decent year, because Michigan's offense is going to look very different without Roman Wilson, without Blake Corum, without Donovan Edwards, without some of these offensive linemen they're going to lose. Yep. He's going to have more of a chance to prove what he can do. And if he plays up to that potential, yeah, he probably is a first-round pick next year. Money shouldn't matter. He's going to get a big, fat NIL deal. It's got to be fun being a quarterback at the University of Michigan right now, I would think, being on that campus. All the reason in the world for him to go back to school, unless he just really wants to be in the NFL right now.
And we're going to really focus on draft prospects in this one, but we have to address Jaylen Milroe. You mentioned he had the 8-yard average up the target, but he only averaged 5 yards per attempt. Was 16 for 23, 116 yards, 45.1 passer rating. Not great. Then he ran 21 times for 63 yards, 3-yard average. Not his best performance. The quotes came out, I believe it was over the weekend or just before the weekend, about how Bill O'Brien, he said that he didn't think that he was a quarterback. Did he prove Bill O'Brien wrong? And also, what did you think of the last play call? Because everybody's talking about it. I'm curious what your thoughts were, because obviously there were snapping problems all game. And, you call a play where it's pretty heavily dependent on a good snap that you hadn't had. And that's, it felt like there had to have been something in your playbook that was better than that, given the circumstances.
And I don't know if you saw this today, Taylor. This was like a couple hours ago. Seth McLaughlin, the center, is entering the transfer portal. So he won't be back at Alabama next year. Probably what's best for everybody, I would think. I didn't think Tommy Rees called a good game throughout. I think there were things that would work and he would instantly go away from them. Some of the Jaylen Milroe designed run stuff, I thought they were making some things work against the screen on the aggressive Michigan front. Michigan's front was awesome in this game. Outstanding. They didn't really get Jermaine Burton involved a ton. I thought he should have had a bigger role. And, Michigan is a good secondary, but he's a guy that you can kind of scheme touches for. And then the last call, when you can't get it snapped. And I know there's some people saying that it was actually an RPO call. It wasn't a designed run. And if you look at it, the running back motions over, and it's maybe, does he swing it out to the running back or go? He loses that opportunity on the bad snap, which again, the bad snap. Michigan sitting on that run. You know what play would have been awesome there? And hindsight's 2020, but just looking at the way Michigan approached it, the old Tim Tebow jump pass, they hit that absolutely in that situation. You guys, I kind of in the back of my head, I had that thought. But on Milroe, I know so many people want to take a victory lap on, the Bill O'Brien comments and say, oh, look, O'Brien was right. He's not a quarterback. He got them there. He got them to the college football playoff. And I don't know that any of the other guys on the roster were going to. They had a couple of freshmen who looked overwhelmed in their opportunities. Tyler Buckner is now a lacrosse player. So you're going to tell me he was going to get them there? He sucked for Notre Dame last year. You can't take those O'Brien comments in the context of the NFL because that's not, I know that's how people think it works. O'Brien's trying to get Alabama national championship when he's the offensive coordinator. That is first and foremost his objective. And Jaylen Milroe proved to be, after the departure of Bryce Young, the best option to get them to a college football playoff. Had O'Brien had his way, Alabama probably doesn't play yesterday at all. And that's where I think you want to take a victory lap on the game, fine. It definitely wasn't Milroe's best game, but he's a quarterback. He is. And we'll see what he does next year. I think it was a smart decision, very smart decision by him to go back to school. He got a lot better this year, but he still has a lot of getting better to do. And we'll see. But yeah, I do wish Tommy Rees had called a better game though, because I think that game was there to be had. And it was too, they didn't just pick one thing and stick with it. And you want to vary your offense, but it felt too scattered. It was hard to tell, watching that game. All right, what was the game plan? What of Michigan's defense were they trying to attack? Were there certain, players they wanted to attack? Were there certain guys that they wanted to emphasize? It was like they were just throwing things against the wall and seeing what stuck, and it was frustrating.
Speaking of Bama players who didn't have their best performance, J.C. Latham. Now, early in the game, obviously blew a huge hole open for the big touchdown run, but we also had the sack where he could have picked up one of two guys. Usually for an offensive lineman, the rule is you take the inside most threat, so the quarterback has a little bit more time because that's the shortest path to the quarterback. He didn't take either. It was a sack. Do you think that performance at all affected his draft status, or at least just your opinion on the kind of player he is and where, if he's a Patriots target, where they could potentially think about taking him?
So you said Latham?
Yes.
Latham. Yeah, if anything, this game made him more likely for the Patriots, even though I didn't think he played well. And if you just hang with me, like, it's not, Patriots love bad players. He's the third tackle in this draft. He's probably going to go somewhere between 10 and 15. That means the Patriots either trading back and not taking a quarterback, or if you're going to take a tackle, you don't trade back. You take Joe Alter or Lou Fashanu, right? Or just trading way up in the first round, which you're talking about getting from, even if it's pick 34, getting from 34 back into the top 15 without giving up a first round pick is nearly impossible. You're going to have to give up like multiple firsts down the road. So he kind of, as good of a player as he is, he wasn't on the table. If scouts are really going to look at this game, maybe it knocks him down into that 20s range. And maybe now it's realistic to trade up from 34 to have a shot at him. And he kind of falls back to that path with, we'll talk about Troy Fashanu in a little bit, the Washington tackle. Patrick Paul's another guy like in that range, that kind of 30 to 50 range. There's a bunch of tackles that are going to go in there. And maybe he kind of ends up, not 30 to 50, but like 20 to 50, something like that. But yeah, he looked overwhelmed at times. I didn't think this was his best game. And it's, it's going to be, scouts pay a little more attention to these. And that's definitely, you're going to hear the Michigan game a lot, I think, when you talk about Latham as we get into the draft process.
Yeah, especially on a staff like Alabama. Like, there are times where you're saying at the college level, like, okay, in the NFL, you're going to get better coaching. First of all, with the Patriots, we have no idea who their offensive line coach is going to be next year. Right. So that's not a guarantee. But also, Alabama is one of the programs where you're saying, all right, he was getting some of the best coaching that you're going to find in college football. How much can he grow in a reasonable time span where he's an instant starter? Because if you're taking him with that kind of capital, you're hoping he could be a pretty quick contributor. What else we got here? Blake Corum and Roman Wilson did have some pretty good performances. Let's turn this thing around, talk some positives. What did you think?
Blake Corum was the best player on the field in the Rose Bowl. He was probably the second best player overall of the semifinals. I think it's obvious who the best was, who I think the best was at least, and we'll get to him. Blake Corum was just awesome in this game, man. He took the game over in a way that, look, it's easier for running backs to take the game over in college than it is in the pros, obviously, but you still don't see it to the extent to which Blake Corum did on Monday. What didn't he do, right? He ran between the tackles. He ran outside the tackles. He broke tackles. He made guys miss. He caught the football. He did a little bit of pass protection. He's a true well-rounded back. You have a job, Blake Corum will do it. And he did it on a big stage against an elite defense. He should be, I apparently there's a bunch of people who don't have him as RB1, and I get people like Travion Henderson, who's the running back at Ohio State. I do like him as well. I don't know how Blake Corum's not RB1 though. I mean, this guy is just, again, I don't want to go to I think well-rounded running back, right? The first guy I go to is Christian McCaffrey. I don't want to go that far. That's, too much, but you want to talk about like Austin Eckler, I think is a guy he looks a lot like. I haven't really thought of a comp for him. I'm kind of doing this off the fly. If there was like a finesse version of Ramondre Stevenson, right? Ramondre's more of a power back, can catch ball a little bit. I think Corum's a better receiver. Really good. What it does mean is I loved Blake Corum for the Patriots. Can you get him early on day 3, like about where they took Ramondre, right? Essentially as Ramondre's replacement. A lot of people are talking about Blake Corum as the new third down back. He's beyond that. Like he could handle that role, but you're kind of limiting him if that's how, entirely how you use him. That all being said, I don't see how Blake Corum gets to day 3 at this point. I don't. If he's not the first running back off the board, he certainly should be the second. If the Patriots want him, they're probably going to have to take him around. Maybe they pick up an extra third somehow, take him late in the third. I'd love to see him here because I think they would have, and I guess we don't know who the offensive coordinator is, but like in the current system, I think he'd be a great fit. But kind of tough to see how that happens because I think he legitimately. I said Michael Penix is probably the most impressive player on the field, but Penix's draft stock was already pretty high. I don't know that any player improved their draft stock on Monday more than Blake Corum did. He was fantastic.
Yeah, and you talk about where he could be taken. It's no secret that running back is undervalued in the modern NFL, but all it takes is one team that says, hey, we don't necessarily need a receiver or tight end. We need a playmaker, someone who we can lean on in certain situations, who we know is going to provide for us week in and week out and be one of our most productive players. All it takes is one of those people to take him in one of the, maybe not the first round. I think we're kind of well past that at this point, unless you are like an electric, like game-breaking speed, that kind of deal. But, I mean, even end of the second, again, all it takes is a team who feels comfortable enough investing in him as somebody who could be one of the faces of their franchise, the faces of their offense, and then he's gone. But hopefully he can be in the Patriots range because especially with what they like to do on offense, so difficult to talk about what the Patriots are going to do next year because we don't know who's going to be running things. But it's probably going to be Bill O'Brien, and, they do like to have not only the versatility but the ability to lean on the run game at will when the offensive line allows them to. We got more to talk about. We're going to move on to the Sugar Bowl, but before we do, quick word from our friends at FanDuel. We'll be back.
Score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money bet. That's $150 if your team wins. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action, NFL. The app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including you got spreads, you got your player props, you got over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL.
All right, so the Sugar Bowl. Now, I think everybody knows who we want to talk about most, but we got to tease you a little bit first. So let's start off with Quinn Ewers. Now, for most of this game, it didn't look like he was somebody who really was going to be able to get out of college. It seemed like, all right, relatively quiet performance. Maybe this guy's got to come back to school. To his credit, Texas did fight back, and they nearly won the game, although I don't know what that last play call was. It looked like something they drew up in the dirt where it's the goal line fade, but like literally the placement was off, but it was just such a bizarre kind of play call and throw. It kind of blew my mind. But do you think that Quinn Ewers did enough to maybe push to say, okay, I think that I've done enough to, show that I can compete with a guy like Michael Penix who rose his stock? Or do you think, go back to school, get another good year in where any of the questions people have, you can just solidify? What's your take there?
Yeah, I think he's going back. I thought he played well in this game. He made some throws early on. What was really impressive was he made a difference with his legs, which we haven't seen him do. Yeah. And that's an interesting angle to add to his game. Got going in the second half. Was hitting Jay. I thought he was placing the ball really well. Hit Ja'Tavion Sanders on a couple crossers. The deep ball to Whittington to set up that last touchdown was good. The high point to A.D. Mitchell, but of course he missed the one throw. He hits that throw to A.D. Mitchell at the end. And Taylor, what I think the play call was all right, we got one of the best jump ball receivers in the nation on a 5'11" corner. He's A.D. Mitchell down there somewhere, right? I think that's essentially what that was. And there is a window, right? If he throws that more as a comeback or as a back shoulder and not as much as an out. I mean, Mitchell
on the hip.
Mitchell got the separation. And it's a great play. I'm blanking on the corner's name. It's a great play by the corner. I don't know if you saw the back angle, Taylor, of that, where the corner comes around with his arm but doesn't touch him. It knocks the ball away. Like it was as clean of a PBU as it was just high level football all around. But I don't know. I think Ewers is going to have his people kind of put their feelers out and go to the NFL and see if he has a real chance to be a first round pick. But was he good? Yes. did he do enough to maybe wow teams to jump some other guys? I think there are teams that would say, yeah, we like him as a first round pick, but not ahead of so-and-so, so-and-so, and so-and-so. And it's like, okay, well, they have 4 quarterbacks ahead of them. They're picking 10th, so they're not going to take up, right? That sort of thing. You do that math. So it wouldn't surprise me if he comes out. I'll say it wouldn't surprise me. As I'm doing my big board right now, I actually wrote out a big board this morning and I left them off. But if it wouldn't surprise me either way, but gut feeling, he goes back to school. Now, what happens with Arch Manning and him becomes another very fascinating story. I wonder if Arch Manning transfers because I think Quinn Ewers is a better quarterback. But we'll see what happens with that. But no, I thought he was good. Definitely left a couple throws on the table, but this was a good performance against a good, not great defense.
Ja'Tavion Sanders and A.D. Mitchell. Do you think that they're legitimate options for the Patriots? Now, we're going to kind of get into the discussion of who they should take, where they should take. We've already had those debates. Right. But do you think they're realistic options for New England?
Oh, yeah. I'll throw Xavier Worthy in there as well. I know Xavier Worthy didn't have a great game. I wonder if he was still dealing with that sprained ankle he suffered in the Big 12 championship. Those 3 guys are all going to be top, call it 60 picks, probably top 50. I would love it if the Patriots came away with those guys. For me, ranking them personally, and this is you can rank them in whatever order you want. I think there's an argument. It's just, what are you looking for? Xavier, right. Xavier Worthy to me is the top guy because speed, quickness, elusiveness, ability after the catch. I love all of that. Then I'd probably go Ja'Tavion Sanders because I think he's got the great makeup for a tight end. They're going to need a long-term tight end option. I think he's a guy, if you drafted him and had him play second fiddle to like Hunter Henry for a year, right? Maybe a franchise tag Hunter Henry, bring him back. Ja'Tavion Sanders, your TE2 for a year. Doesn't mean he doesn't contribute, but like you're not banking on him. Give him a year to really kind of work on his game and then have him take over in 2025. I think that would make a ton of sense. I do really like A.D. Mitchell too. They've tried. How many times have we seen them try with these big body X outside guys and they just can't figure it out? Maybe if it's a different coaching staff, I feel differently, but you still have Devontae Parker under contract. Like that to me would feel a lot like, I don't know, like you're moving on from Devontae Parker at that point because I don't see how Parker and A.D. Mitchell are both on the field. So that's my order. If they move on from Parker, Mitchell moves up, something like that. Right, exactly. Well, ideally they're moving on from Parker for T. Higgins, in which case, again, you don't need A.D. to play. I mean, I would not be upset if they landed any of them. I really wouldn't. I think they're all really good, but I think Sanders specifically in this game, Mitchell had that one really nice catch for the touchdown where it looked like he Mario double jumped, which was awesome. You saw with Sanders the athleticism. He's going up, he's catching some of those footballs above his head, and then at 6'4", 250. His ability to come down from that and just shift his momentum and get upfield. He's a chore to tackle. I think you kind of saw the flashes with him that are really fun. He is a converted defensive end, so his technique is still a little raw. I would, if that scares anybody, I would point to Keon White, who was a tight end who converted a defensive end. Ja'Tavion Sanders, it's kind of a weird comp to make, but there's actually, in terms of the profile, the athletic profile, Ja'Tavion Sanders is kind of similar to Keon White. They just switch positions the other way. We're like, you're talking about a guy that's a freak athlete, has made some great strides in his first few years playing this position. He's going to need to kind of work on his game and grow his game, and that's why he's not a first-round pick. There's going to be some growing pains with that. But, boy, if you develop him right, I mean, we're seeing it with Keon White right now. We saw what he did against the Bills. Picture that on offense. I think that's what you're talking about with a guy like Ja'Tavion Sanders if he goes to the right situation. So I really liked what I saw from him. I thought he was probably Texas's best, definitely the best offensive player in this game, maybe their best overall player. I thought Byron Murphy, the defensive tackle, had a really good game as well.
Yeah. And yeah, you mentioned how you could re-sign Hunter Henry and still use him. It kind of reminds me of an Algie Crumpler situation where when they took Hernandez and they took Gronkowski, it was like Crumpler was clearly the starter, but there was plenty of snaps to go around for the young guys, and they obviously still contributed. Like DeMario Douglas just passed Rob Gronkowski's, I think it's his receiving yards total from his rookie year, and then he's 16 yards shy of Hernandez. And so there's still plenty of those to go around. But here's the thing. So Troy Fautanu, people are talking about, is he a guard? Is he a tackle? Well, according to Jim Nagy, he has 34.5-inch arms. That's
he hit the benchmarks, baby.
There we go. So, and I know our buddy Damien at the Draft Network was saying, if you just have him at tackle, and if he can't do it in training camp, then you move him, but you take him and you expect him to just stick at the same position. So Brandon Thorne has him, another friend of the show, as a late first round, early second round pick. Where are you leaning? Because you know where I stand. I think, like you just said, there's so many receiver prospects that you can take. And obviously, we're talking about really more towards, again, end of the first or the second round. But throughout the draft, you can find really talented guys who can contribute for you early. Would you want to take that tackle? Would you take a Fautanu? Or do you think they just really need a playmaker? Because you know my thoughts. I think tackles are too hard to find, even in deep draft classes, and they don't last very long.
So I think Fautanu's a great you're talking about with their second pick.
Yes, the second pick.
Yeah. I mean, he makes a ton of sense. Would he be my first choice? I still got to catch. There's so many guys here, Taylor, in this draft, just to kind of sum it up. So this is the consensus big board right now. All these guys are from 20 to 50. Amarius Mims from Georgia, Talise Fugawa from Oregon State, Fautanu, Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma, Kingsley Sutamara from BYU, Jordan Morgan from Arizona, Patrick Paul from Houston. I watched a little bit of some of these guys. I like Morgan. I like Paul. A lot of these guys will be at the Senior Bowl. That's going to be massive. Can I tell you right now, stamp it? I like, Fautanu, I like Mims over Fautanu, and I like Fautanu over Morgan. I like Paul over Fautanu, right? I don't know. Sorting that part of the board out is going to be one of the bigger quagmires we face in this draft process. It reminds me of the day 2 receivers last year where it was like 10 guys that are expected to go in like 15 picks, and where are you putting all of them? It was a mess, and everybody had a different order and whatever.
It makes it fun.
That being, and it's part of the fun of it. It's work, but it's part of the fun of it. That being said, Fautanu was in that group, and I think he's rightfully in that group. He had a very good game against a very good Texas defensive front. Texas defense, by the way, and I know they got lit up, but for what they were on the season in an offensive conference like the Big 12, not getting enough credit for how good they are. But I thought Fautanu had a really good game again. 4-year starter, which is great. To me, Fautanu is, and this is how it'll kind of break down with some of the guys in that range I just read. He's a 4-year starter. He's 24 years old. He looks pretty maxed out physically at, I think, 6'4", 317. He's a floor guy. Like, you're getting a day 1 starter, but he's probably not going to be much better than he is right now. And he's good enough right now to play in the NFL. But I don't think he's a guy you're ever going to be talking about as like an all-pro, right? But maybe you just feel like we need a hit on a tackle. We just need a tackle. Fautanu is one of the safer options, whereas if you go to a guy like Amarius Mims, who's only a 2-year starter and looks a little more raw, but he's younger and he's still bulking up, that's like, all right, this guy can be a stud, and he's not right now, and we're going to have to work with him. So that's what it's going to come down to. We got to see what they do in free agency. We got to see what happens with Michael Onwenu, but Fautanu should be on their board. It's too soon to say that he's like the pick at 34. If they trade up late in the first, I think he's an option. But he's absolutely on the board. And before we move off Washington's offensive line, I don't know if you had any more thoughts on Fautanu, but let me just say the Patriots, if it's still Bill, the Patriots like to do this thing where everybody's looking at one prospect and there's another guy that's on the field with that guy. And so the one I remember is Cash Malawia. Remember the linebacker from Wyoming? And ultimately it didn't work out, but Wyoming had some other like great player. I don't remember who it was, but they were like, yeah, every time we watched tape of this guy, Cash Malawia was just making plays.
Logan Wilson? Was it Logan Wilson?
That sounds right. Yeah, I think it was Logan Wilson. Yeah. And Dietrich Wise was, I forget who the other Arkansas rusher was, but Dietrich Wise was another guy they got like that for a good example. Roger Rosengarten, the right tackle for Washington, was very good in this game. And he's an underrated prospect as a day 3 pick. Now, he's a right tackle. So if they re-sign Michael Onwenu, he's off the table. But if Michael Onwenu leaves, Rosengarten on day 3 is a player to watch. I thought he was also, and I don't think either one of them allowed a sack. Neither one of them allowed a sack. Rosengarten didn't allow a pressure in 72 snaps. Fautanu allowed 2. But they were both really good in this game, and both guys that in different ways, both guys that should be on the radar for the Patriots.
All right, I know all the real football nerds love this offensive line talk, but I know most people are here to talk quarterbacks. One quarterback in particular, Mr. Michael Penix Jr. But before we get into him, quick word from our friends at SeatGeek. We'll be back.
I've been looking for the best deal on Celtics tickets, and with over 28 million downloads, SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app. There are more than 70,000 events every single day on SeatGeek, including concerts, sports festivals, and more. With the NFL, NBA, and NHL seasons in full swing, you don't want to miss out. SeatGeek has your tickets to every game. Plus, artists like Travis Scott are on tour. They put all the tickets across the web in one place to make sure you're getting a good deal. Each ticket is rated on a scale of 1 to 10, so look for the green dots. Green means good and red means bad. Every ticket is backed by their buyer guarantee, and SeatGeek is the only site that lets you return your tickets ahead of the event with swaps. So as you know, I always come through for you guys. You can use my code DREAMERSPRO for $20 off tickets at SeatGeek. That's $20 off your first purchase with promo code DREAMERSPRO. Make sure you check the link in the description to download the app.
All right, so Michael Penix Jr., one of the few guys in these games that I actually did sit down and get to really break down to see just how he performed, because he was one of the best college players who played this weekend. The deep accuracy, it's not a surprise, but it's so impressive, especially considering with the footwork. Like, it's not always perfect. It's still something that, especially if you look really deep into his film, you'll see that his accuracy can kind of get all over the place because of it. And then he's got the kind of Phillip Rivers type release where it's a little slow, looks a little wonky, but man, does that ball get there. When you talk about the touch, the zip, like the one where he split the safeties and threw it to Jalen Polk. I mean, then he had the really nice touch throw to the sideline where they faked the bubble screens. I actually get to talk some X's and O's because I really got to sit down with this one. But, I mean, he was really impressive. So what were your thoughts? And do you think he's not only entered the first round conversation, because I really think that at the very least he could maybe be taken towards the end, but do you think he's inserted himself into the top 10, top 15 conversation? And all of this is, of course, assuming the medical's clear and he continues to have a good performance in the championship game.
Oh, I mean, I think he's a first round lock now. And I think it's a matter of top 15 or top 10 with him, Taylor. My first thought was, wow. I think I audibly said that on 7 or 8 of those throws. I mean, that was one of the best quarterbacked games I've seen in a long time at the college level. He was so good, so good. And you talk about, where do you start? The poise, the pocket movement, the ball placement, the velocity, the reads. He didn't make a mistake. He didn't make a single mistake. They dropped. How many times did he throw the ball in that game? How many pass play? 42 times they threw the ball in that game. He didn't make one mistake against a good Texas defense. This is a Texas defense that was top 15 in the nation overall, that was top 30 against the pass. And he picked them apart. And there's moments where I thought balls are dropped because I didn't see the receiver move his hand. So I'm like, oh, that's overthrown. No, he put it where, forget the receiver not having to break stride. The receiver didn't have to move his hands.
Yeah.
And he's doing this
to a Dunze, just
right. He's doing this in a tight coverage windows. He's stepping around rushers in the pocket, step, reset, throw. He's throwing off balance. We saw him run a little bit in this game, which I've been trying to tell you guys. It's not that he's immobile. He just doesn't want to do it to protect himself, which I get. But when he has to do it, he can be a factor with his legs. He was, again, I can't say enough. I can't say enough about how good Michael Penix was in that game. And I know Odunze is a great receiver. Right? Jalen Polk had a great game. We'll talk about him. But like you said, the throw to Odunze, what does Odunze really do there? I mean, Penix puts it right on his hands, right? He just kind of tenses his fingers up a little bit to catch the ball. That's it. The throw, he splits the safeties to Jalen McMillan. McMillan tips it up in the air and then catches it, right? That's what he did. But the ball's on a rope. And that's the other thing. It's like, all right, when he needs to thread it, he threads it. When he needs a touch pass, it's a touch pass. There was not one moment watching that game. And this is so rare for college. It's rare for the NFL. Forget college football. Yeah. Where you're sitting there saying, what did he see? Why did he make the decision he made? Because I don't see it. Everything he pressed was the right button. And that wasn't an anomaly. He's had other games like that. But to do it on that stage against that team, man, he looks special. I got to tell you, if it wasn't for the knee injuries, I think we'd be talking about him as a potential 1-1 today. I really do. Absolutely. But look, and that matters. That matters. And there's a legitimate risk with a guy who's torn both ACLs, with a guy that's had 4 season-ending injuries before 2 clean years the last 2 years. That factors in. The combine medicals are going to be huge, but I've said it about it from the beginning. I'm going to keep saying it, Taylor. There is not a better thrower of the football. He is the best thrower of the football we've seen come out in the last 3 years. I'll take him over anybody in that 22 class, right? That's the Kenny Pickett class. I mean, that class sucks, but he's a better thrower of the football than Bryce Young. He's a better thrower of the football than CJ Stroud, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis, whoever you want from last year. The ball just explodes out of his hand. I mean, just it's gone. And I know some people struggle with the lefty throwing motion. I flipped it. If you go look on my Twitter, I flipped the video. Does he have the best mechanics in the world? No, you probably wouldn't teach a quarterback to throw like that. And honestly, there's times where I'm looking at it and I'm like, his footwork kind of sucks here. But then I see that the ball is put, in a keyhole 45 yards down the field. And I'm like, all right, I guess it doesn't really matter, right? It's Aaron Rodgers was another. Well, Phillip Rivers is the obvious comp, right? Coaches always say you would never teach a young quarterback to throw the football the way Phillip Rivers throws the football. But so good that you weren't going to tweak it. Another example, sorry, is Steph Curry. Steph Curry's jump shot's like great. Never get to shoot like Steph Curry. But is anybody going to sit here and be like Steph Curry's jump shot is a problem? No, never. It's one of those things like his mechanics, they're not bad. I don't want to sit here and say they're bad. His mechanics aren't bad, but they're good enough. And for the flaws that are in there, they don't seem to bother him much.
And we talk about mechanics with quarterbacks. It's important to remember that it's more about comfort than you being mechanical. Like some guys like Patrick Mahomes, you don't want him throwing like a Peyton Manning because he's not going to be comfortable. There are things that every quarterback needs to fine tune. Like Tom Brady even, it was like the 1% of the 1% where there's always something you can do better to get your release quicker, to just get a little bit more something else, what have you. Penix just looks like a guy who was born to play quarterback. And not only just from a physical perspective, where like you said, the mechanics aren't perfect, but the passes are just beautiful. And the fact that we've seen in several of these big games late in the fourth quarter, when we're talking like, all right, if he decides to take a shot and it's inaccurate or gets picked off or he makes a mistake, like it could very well end up completely swinging the game. Not only does he have the ice in his veins to make those decisions, but he comes through. And then you look at like the way he talks post game, like he even kind of slighted Texas. He was like as respectful as he could be. He's like, yeah, I want to credit them. They got great players. They're well coached, called a good game, blah, blah, blah. But, I thought what they were doing was kind of simple. And honestly, watching it, I thought the same thing because there was no safety rotations. They weren't trying to confuse him at all. They were just lining up, all right, middle field closed, middle field open, making it easy for him. The dude didn't really have to do anything. It was like he was on autopilot, just cutting them up. And I mean, like you said, the medicals are really important. But the fact that he can do what he does with injuries to both shoulders, with the same ACL injury twice, and he's still, it's like, I've seen some reports that say he doesn't have the same physical ability that he did when he was younger. Sure, but he's still fantastic. So I'm excited to watch him in the championship game, to just see more of what he can do, let him build on his legend. Just absolutely impressive prospect. Is there anything else you want to add before we move on?
I mean, if he tears up Michigan, like he's a top 10 lock. Against
that's an NFL defense, right?
Right, like I said, Texas defense is good, doesn't get enough credit. Michigan's defense is best in the country. It's the best in the country, and he's going to have to do more in terms of maneuvering the pocket and stuff like that. But, yeah, boy, and they might have, it sounds like they're going to have Dylan Johnson, their running back, who got hurt late in that game. But is he going to be at 100%? That was, I'm glad to see he's okay. Another guy like for the Patriots, by the way, on day 3. But yeah, it's just I'm still going back and watching the clips because I'm just like, I don't remember the last time, even at the NFL level, I don't remember the last time I saw a quarterback play like that. I mean, just every single pass is right on the hands with no window. He's not getting brought down in the backfield. He's so calm and poised. And like you said, too, like you can see how much his teammates love playing with him. And that's a factor, too. Like he's a leader of men. He's got that dog in him, however you want to phrase it. I keep going back to it. If it's not for the knee injuries, he's pushing Caleb Williams. And the knee injuries are real, absolutely. And that's something if you're somebody who doesn't care about that, and I think you have to care about it. But if you're somebody who doesn't care about it, I think the age thing's overblown. But if you're somebody who doesn't care about the knee injuries, I don't know how Michael Penix isn't 1-1. And I will say, for a team like the Patriots that maybe wants a pop right away, and cares more about, say, the 3-year window than the 10-year window, Michael Penix looks pretty damn good right now, especially if they win this week and they fall to 4 or 5. Because you get a couple of pieces. You get that guy, T. Higgins, and you have him dotting balls 40 yards down the field to T. Higgins. You got something there. Now, you got to build an offensive line. You got to take care of them.
Yeah,
but
yeah, exactly. That's when it's like, all right, that second pick, I want to get him Jalen Polk, but no, we got to get him a good tackle.
Right.
And then you talk about, like, it's the kind of the similar Mac Jones argument where it's like, well, look at all the talent around him. Like, he's got all these guys who are going to go top 100 in the draft. Sure. But like you mentioned, he's putting these balls in windows that don't exist. You have the play where he had a free rusher coming right down the pipe immediately at him. Quick side swipe, get the ball out. I think he had like a couple plays like that, actually, where pressure was coming down and he just delivers a perfect pass. So that's what you want to see. We're sure you're throwing a great playmakers who are coming down and finishing for you. But also you want to see him be able to make those just like really, really high level plays where when things don't go right and things aren't perfect circumstances where, Odunze's doesn't have 10 yards of separation downfield where it's like, all right, just hit him in stride and, just get the completion. I mean, I don't really know how many more questions other than obviously the medicals he has to answer because he's doing it on big stages. There's inconsistencies, I think, in some of the earlier games I saw. Again, like there were a couple games where the accuracy in terms of inconsistency was like, wow, but you didn't see it in that game. And again, in these big games, you're seeing him come through. So we could do an entire show just on him. But the point is, Michael Penix Jr., you are him.
Actually, let me bring up one more comment here. This is really interesting, and this is a minor thing that I thought was big in this game. Jason brings up a good point. You didn't always see the Texas DBs turn to play the ball. For all the crap we give Bill about developing wide receivers, one thing they do coach that I love, and this I think Randy Moss taught him this, you don't show your hands until the last second. So if you're tracking the ball down the field, right, you're running back to the quarterback, receivers running back to the quarterback, corners running back to the quarterback. You might be looking back for the ball. The corner is looking at you. If you put your hands up, the corner knows the ball is coming, right? And he's going to get in position. Where you go watch the Randy Moss, and Randy Moss is obviously the GOAT. Like not everybody can do this, but Randy Moss, it would be, as the ball is coming down over his shoulder, he just pops his hands out, right? That's where Michael Penix's accuracy comes in. A lot of the reason that Texas DBs weren't turning is because all the Washington wide receivers were coming through with late hands because the ball's right there. They didn't have to, because you're running here, right? You're running like at your chest, and they just kind of had to pop their hands open. They don't have to go over here. They don't have to go over here. They don't have to go back here. Right. He allowed Penix, enabled them to really take advantage of the late hands technique. And I don't think it was the Texas defensive backs not knowing to turn. Like not, knowing like the coaching point to turn. They're doing what they're told. You watch the receiver and you play the hands because that's what you do on a guy running down the field. If you turn back to look, you slow down, you can't keep up. I'm going to guess if Bill's still here in the Patriots draft Penix, this is going to be a huge thing with them, is going to be his ability to put the ball right on guys and take advantage of that late hands concept. So, maybe some of it was college players. I don't want to say that was like 100% of the time, but no, there were times where it was definitely, you could see the hands go really late and the corners start to turn, but it's too late. The ball's already there because it was just so accurate. The receiver could really take advantage of that because he didn't have to move his hands that far. Didn't have to break stride or anything to get to the football.
Yeah, I think there's a Rob Gronkowski like mic'd up video or something where he says the same thing where like the season before he was playing Buffalo or something like that, and he put his hands up too early and he got swiped out. And he was like, there was another huge play he made. He credited, I just didn't show him my hands and I was able to come down with it. So yeah, I'm really excited. All right, real quick, we got some other stuff we got to get to. We had Bo Nix. He's going to be going to the Senior Bowl. We also had Cam Ward. He's going to the draft. Talk about those guys, whether you think they would be fits in New England, where you think they should get them. Because I know with Bo Nix, he's kind of polarizing guy. I know some people think he's better than the top quarterbacks in the class, which I do not agree with. But then there's a debate of, okay, is he a late first? Is he a second round? So let us know what your thoughts are on those fellas.
So Nix, older prospect, going to be 24, 6 years as a starter. He's got over 50 starts under his belt. You love that. I think the Senior Bowl is going to be really good because he was very good at Oregon, but it was a very quarterback-friendly system. And that's not to knock him, but like setting the completion percentage record, again, he's not throwing the ball very far. It's schemed for him to not throw the ball in the tight windows, things like that. he's not necessarily going to have the benefit of that at the Senior Bowl. We're going to get to see him throw the ball more down the field, throw to some more covered receivers. It's going to be really, really interesting to see, and also see him throw under center, which he didn't do a lot at Oregon. I still think he's a Shanahan quarterback. Like, I think if you put him in a Shanahan system where it's very paint by number, you can take advantage of some of the stuff he does with his legs, not necessarily designed quarterback runs, but using his legs to extend plays. He's very good on the bootleg. He's very good rolling out of the pocket. Maybe if the Patriots running a Shanahan system, I get more excited about it. But, we'll see with him. I do think it's great. He's going to the Senior Bowl. I think that's a great chance. Now can we get Drake May there? That's what I really want to see. As for Cam Ward, so I had to kind of, fire drill, scramble, catch up on Cam Ward because I didn't think he was coming out. He was getting offered $2 million NIL deals on the transfer portal. I thought he was going to Ohio State. I thought that was a lock. Super exciting quarterback. Another guy that, big deep ball thrower, big arm, ball explodes out. He's got some athletic ability. He's got, the mojo, the charisma you want to see from one of those quarterbacks. Only 2 years as a starter, only 25 starts under his belt. The NFL uses 25 starts as a cutoff. So I guess are numbers, and I've kind of tried to look at it. Maybe there's more in-depth numbers they're using. I don't know what NFL teams consider success exactly at the quarterback position, but I guess 25 starts is where that cutoff is for successful NFL quarterbacks. 25 starts,
especially for Bill with that Parcells, because Parcells has his rules on quarterbacks, and Bill tends to stick to that. So that's a pretty significant factor.
So Cam Ward's right on that line. Who Cam Ward is to me, and Taylor, I remember I told you this. I do this with Evan, right? We tier guys, right? Where you had Zay Flowers last year, and then you had day 2 Zay Flowers was Tank Dell, and you had day 3 Zay Flowers, which was Demario Douglas. Cam Ward to me is day 2 Caleb Williams, where he is really good at that out of structure, play breaks down. He's going to extend. He's not a runner. He's not like Jaden Daniels where he's going to take, he can run, but that's not a plus for him. He's going to look to throw. He's really good out of structure. He can extend plays. He can make the throws down the field, and he can zip the ball in the tight windows. He's not nearly as technically sound as Caleb Williams. I don't think he sees the field as well as Caleb Williams. He doesn't have that experience. So that's where he falls to day 2, right? He's much more boom or bust. But if you like that skill set, he's a guy you look at if you can't get Caleb Williams. Now, I don't think he's NFL ready. He's probably a guy you got to sit for, I don't know, about a full year, but you got to give him a couple of months in an NFL offense to get accustomed to it. So I don't think maybe if his stock falls, he's a guy you take early on day 3 and you do the RG3 Kirk Cousins thing. Penix and Ward could make some sense. You pair those two guys. But I think he's more a team that is a year or 2 away from needing a quarterback, just trying to get ahead of it. I do like Cam Ward. I do think he's a fun prospect. But, yeah, he's not a first-round guy. I don't think he's a year 1, week 1 starter kind of guy. Had he stayed a year, maybe. I think you're talking about him as one of the top quarterbacks in 2025, which again is why this is so surprising. And I'd love to know why he decided to come out. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see kind of how NFL teams handle him, because I don't think teams expected him to come out, and there might be some catch up there as well.
All right. So for the championship game.
Yes.
Give me your predictions on this one real quick before we get out of here, because personally, I don't see J.J. McCarthy. I don't know. I don't see Blake Corum out-dueling Michael Penix Jr. If we're being totally honest, I don't think putting Penix and McCarthy in the same conversation of who's going to out-duel who, let's be realistic. Corum is the heart and soul of that Michigan offense, but also that defense is fantastic. This is going to be a different type of test for Penix, and it's going to be fun because we're going to get to see what he can do against not only NFL talent, but a scheme that's going to challenge him more than did Texas. So what's your prediction for this one?
Yeah, man, it's so tough. So I picked earlier Washington to cover 4.5. I don't know if I'm picking with my heart or my head on that one, honestly. I wonder what Washington this year has been very good at, when the passing game isn't there initially, running the ball, establishing the run, and then getting back to the passing game off of that once they've kind of offset that pass rush and they have the defensive backs looking in the backfield. With this Michigan front, with Dylan Johnson banged up, I wonder how viable of a strategy that is if they can't throw initially. And I wonder if Michigan's front just takes over this game.
Yeah.
Now, could Michael Penix simply be better and rise above it and make more plays in the pocket and get the ball down the field? Absolutely. I just, if Michigan can start turning the ball over right on defense, then that's it. I do think Michigan wins. I think there's a world in which Penix has a good game and Michigan wins. I think Michigan wins, but I don't think we're coming away talking about JJ McCarthy or even Blake Corum. I think we're coming away talking about Chris Jenkins. I think we're coming away talking about Mike Sanders still. I think we're coming away talking about Rod Moore. Like, I think we're coming away just saying, wow, that Michigan defense stepped up, made plays, receivers weren't open, Penix was under duress. And I will say this about Penix. He hasn't been great under pressure this year. That Texas game was
numbers were rough.
A bit of an anomaly in that regard, right? I think for the most part, that's what we've seen him be this year, but he certainly elevated his game against pressure. He has to do that again for Washington to beat Michigan because he's going to be pressured more, and he's going to have to handle it in order to win this game. If not, I think Michigan, because they're going to run the crap out of the ball. They're going to keep that clock running. They're going to shorten this game as much as possible. If it's up to them, there's only going to be 7 or 8 drives for each team in this game. And then, there's no margin for error for Washington. You have to be perfect. And I think Washington can do that. We saw them just play a perfect game last week. But I want to say Washington. I want to say Michael Penix comes out and lights him up. I hope he proves me wrong. Because I just think Michigan's defense is so freaking good, man. They've got dudes all over the field on that side of the ball. And it's going to be tough for Washington they haven't been tested like this before. They haven't been tested with a defense like this. And even if it takes them a quarter to adjust against a team that can control the clock like Michigan on offense, it might be too late.
Yeah. These are going to be 2 teams with like legitimate NFL talent, especially talking Washington's offense, Michigan's defense. It could be its own show entirely talking about those matchups, but we got to get out of here for tonight. Alex, please let the people know what fantastic stuff you got coming down the pipeline for the rest of the week.
Yeah, it's all on 98.5thesportshub.com. We're catching up on the end of the season here, getting ready to get into the offseason. And me and Evan will break down the college football play. I'm making Evan talk about the college football playoff tomorrow on Catch 22 Thursday morning. So you can check that out.
Awesome. Thank you, brother. Thank you all for watching. As always, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we will see you next time.